If you're one of the millions of people who fall asleep to the comforting sound of pink noise or, rain audio every night, you might actually be robbing your brain of nearly 2 hours of vital repair time every single week. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so today we are uncovering the invisible, everyday stressors that are secretly keeping your body in a state of high alert. I mean, we're talking about everything from the literal sounds in your bedroom to the metabolic environment of your cells, and more importantly, how you can take back control.
Right, because that loss of repair time is, it's the absolute definition of a biological Trojan horse. We actively seek out these layers of comfort to shield ourselves from the day's chaos, but we're completely unaware that we are accidentally disrupting the body's natural healing systems.
Exactly. Okay, so let's unpack this with a quick analogy.
Hmm.
Think of your body like a smartphone. If you never let it plug in and, run its overnight software update, the battery degrades, the apps start crashing, and eventually the hardware just fails.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
Right. And today we are looking at the invisible background apps draining your battery. And the first one is sitting right on your nightstand. Millions of people rely on broadband noise white, pink, brown noise
Hmm.
just to sleep.
Mm.
But we have a fascinating study out of Penn Medicine on healthy adults, and it revealed a massive paradox about pink noise specifically.
Yeah, the sheer scale of the sleep disruption here is what makes this so wild. The researchers played pink noise at about 50 decibels throughout the night. Now, for context, 50 decibels is not loud at all.
No, not at all.
It's basically the equivalent of moderate rainfall or like a quiet refrigerator hum.
Mhm.
But that seemingly gentle sound caused a really significant drop in REM sleep. The participants lost nearly 19 minutes of REM sleep per night.
19 minutes a night. Man, it's over 2 hours of lost REM sleep a week.
Over 2 hours where your brain is supposed to be doing its most critical housekeeping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because REM sleep isn't just about dreaming. It's the phase where we consolidate complex memories, regulate our emotional processing for the next day, and this is key clear out metabolic waste.
Right. And when the researchers combined that ambient pink noise with normal environmental noise like, say, a distant car driving by or a door shutting in the house, the results were even worse. Both deep sleep and REM sleep just plummeted.
And didn't the participants also spend like extra time completely awake?
Yes, an extra 15 minutes completely awake during the night, often without even remembering it the next morning.
But wait a second, I gotta push back here because if pink noise is a biological stressor, how do we explain the massive popularity of it? I mean, the sources say Spotify has 3 million hours of white noise and ambient podcasts streaming daily. The top YouTube videos for this stuff have 700 million views. Are you telling me hundreds of millions of people are essentially putting their brains on a treadmill all night?
They absolutely are. It sounds crazy, but to understand why this happens, we have to look at evolutionary biology. Your brain doesn't actually turn off when you sleep. It literally can't.
Because of predators. Exactly. If early humans turned their brains off completely, they would have been eaten. Your brain is a radar system. It is constantly monitoring the environment for threats. So, when you play pink noise continuously, your auditory processing centers are forced to stay partially active just to process that incoming data.
Oh, wow, so it's working all night.
Right. It acts as a mild chronic stressor. It prevents the brain from fully surrendering into that deep restorative REM stage because it's constantly digesting this audio junk food.
Audio junk food. I love that phrase. So if the rain sounds are keeping the brain on a treadmill, what actually works to get that deep sleep back?
Well, ordinary foam earplugs vastly outperformed pink noise. The study showed that simply wearing earplugs restored 72% of the deep sleep that normally gets lost to environmental noise.
Let's pause on that because the study specifically highlighted the N3 stage of deep sleep being restored by those earplugs. For someone listening right now who, tracks their sleep on an Apple Watch or an Oura Ring, what exactly is happening in N3 that makes it so vital?
So N3 is the deepest, most restorative stage of non-REM sleep. In N3, your brain waves slow down to these massive rolling delta waves. Your blood pressure drops, breathing stabilizes, and blood flow is actively directed away from the brain and into your muscles.
Okay.
And this is the exact moment your body releases human growth hormone to physically repair torn tissues, build bone, and synthesize the immune cells you need to fight off illness. The earplugs restored about 17 minutes of this crucial N3 stage simply by blocking the sound rather than, adding more noise to cover it up.
Which is huge. And there's a really crucial warning in this research for parents too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially those with newborns.
Oh, it's a vital warning. Newborns are biologically wired to need 14 to 17 hours of sleep a day. And they spend significantly more time in REM sleep than adults do because their brains are actively developing and forming new neural pathways.
Right, they're building the brain from scratch.
Exactly. So if a baby is subjected to constant sound machine exposure, their auditory centers are literally never getting a break. We are looking at potential long-term impacts on how those developing brains process sound and manage stress.
That's terrifying. So if one night of pink noise causes this sort of microenergy deficit by keeping the brain slightly stressed, what happens when that energy crisis becomes a chronic, decades-long condition?
That's where things get really serious.
Right. Which brings us to our next major insight. We're moving from overnight stress to lifelong stress. There's some incredible clinical research out of Serbia published in the journal Curious that completely shifts how we view Alzheimer's disease. It frames it not as a sudden memory issue or, a random stroke of bad luck, but as a slow, silent erosion of our stress chemistry.
Yeah, the researchers in Serbia were mapping the hormones of 85 adults, looking specifically at the relationship between two vital chemicals. First, cortisol, which is the body's primary stress hormone.
The famous one, yeah.
Right. And second, DHEAS, which is a highly protective neurosteroid in the brain. They found the Alzheimer's patients had cortisol levels averaging nearly 399 nanomoles per liter.
Which is high.
That is 20% higher than their healthy peers of the exact same age.
But the real danger highlighted in the data wasn't just the high cortisol itself, right? Because the DHEAS levels in those Alzheimer's patients remained completely flat. So it's actually the ratio between the two that serves as the ultimate warning sign.
Now, the ratio is everything. There's a bioenergetic researcher, Georgi Dinkov, who provides a brilliant framework for this. He explains that chronic stress isn't just a psychological feeling of being overwhelmed at work.
Right, it's not just feeling stressed out.
Exactly. It is a physical symptom of low metabolic energy. To put it simply, your cells run on a microscopic energy currency called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate.
Mm-hmm.
When your cells lack ATP, they literally cannot perform their basic functions. The body panics. It views this lack of energy as a literal emergency, so it spikes cortisol. Cortisol's main job in an energy crisis is to break down your own healthy tissue to convert it into emergency fuel.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy, because the chemistry here is just wild. So cortisol is essentially a fire alarm, and DHEAS is the sprinkler system. If the alarm rings constantly, but the sprinklers run dry, the house essentially burns down, right? The neurons get corroded.
That's a perfect way to visualize it, yes.
But what is DHEA actually doing biologically to act as that sprinkler system?
So DHEA physically blocks the specific enzyme in your body that turns cortisol on. It prevents inactive cortisone from becoming active destructive cortisol. So when you have plenty of DHEA, it cools the system down.
It puts the fire out.
Right. But when that ratio tips, when ATP is low, cortisol is screaming, and DHEA is depleted, the brain is left completely unprotected. That unchecked cortisol dramatically increases inflammation and literally suppresses the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus.
Which is the memory and learning center of your brain.
Exactly.
And that ties directly into the plaques we always hear about with Alzheimer's, right? The amyloid beta and tau proteins. Because for a long time, we've thought of those plaques as the root cause of the disease. But this research paints them more like metabolic exhaust.
Yes, metabolic exhaust is the exact right term.
Like they are cellular trash that builds up when the brain is stuck in an energy crisis. And the overnight cleaning crew, which we just learned relies on deep REM sleep, doesn't show up to clear it out.
That is the perfect way to look at it. The brain is essentially eating its own circuitry to stay awake and manage the stress. The plaques are just the graveyard of that metabolic failure.
Man, it's terrifying. But it's also incredibly empowering to realize this is a metabolic process we can actually influence, which raises a massive question. If this metabolic stress and cellular energy failure is corroding the brain, what on earth is it doing to the rest of the body?
Well, it creates a systemic environment where disease thrives. And we see the ultimate consequence of this in a massive global cancer audit conducted by the World Health Organization and the International Agency for Research on Cancer.
This was the one published in Nature Medicine, right?
Yes, Nature Medicine. And the premise here shatters the idea that cancer is just a random lottery of genetic bad luck. It is heavily shaped by the exact same metabolic and environmental terrain we just talked about.
Yeah, the sheer volume of data in this audit is staggering. I mean, they looked at 18.7 million new cancer cases globally in 2022, and they found that 7.1 million of those cases, nearly 38%, were directly tied to preventable modifiable risks.
Nearly 4 out of 10 cancer cases globally.
Unbelievable.
And the gender gap is fascinating, too. For men, over 45% of cases were linked to these preventable risks, compared to about 30% for women.
Wow.
And when we break down those drivers, tobacco is still the massive one, responsible for 15.1% of cases globally, heavily driving lung cancer.
Right.
Then preventable infections like HPV and H. pylori drive about 10.2%, causing cervical and stomach cancers. But the real revelation comes when we look at the metabolic drivers. Alcohol, for instance, drives over 3% of cases globally.
And this is where the research ties everything together with a concept that is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Molecular rust.
Yes.
We need to talk about what that actually means for the listener, because this isn't just about heavy drinking. The data highlights a massive everyday dietary danger, linoleic acid, or LA.
Right.
This is a polyunsaturated fat found in high amounts in seed oils, like canola, soybean, and corn oil. For someone listening right now, this isn't some abstract chemical. This is the salad dressing they had for lunch, the oat milk in their coffee, or the cooking oil used in almost every restaurant.
It is entirely ubiquitous in the modern diet, and
Yeah.
the biology of how it damages us is profound. When you consume alcohol, your liver converts it into a highly toxic aldehyde called acetaldehyde. Similarly, when linoleic acid breaks down in your body, it oxidizes and forms another toxic aldehyde called 4-HNE. Both acetaldehyde and 4-HNE act as this molecular rust.
But how does rust work inside a human cell? Like, what is it actually corroding?
So it binds directly to the proteins and lipids inside your cells, but most devastatingly, it corrodes mitochondrial DNA. Your mitochondria are the little factories inside your cells that produce the ATP energy currency we were just talking about.
Oh, wow, so it directly hits the energy factories.
Exactly. This molecular rust literally destroys your body's ability to produce energy. When mitochondria fail, cellular energy drops, the cortisol alarm spikes to find alternative fuel, and you create an oxygen-depleted, highly inflammatory environment. That is the exact terrain where tumors can take root and thrive.
So it's all connected. The research recommends keeping linoleic acid intake under 5 grams a day, ideally under 2 grams, to stop this rusting process. But hold on, we have to look at the other dietary recommendation here, because it completely flips the script on the carbs are the enemy trend we've been fed for the last decade.
It really does.
The data suggests shifting macronutrients away from excess fat and actually aiming for about 250 grams of healthy carbohydrates daily to fuel those mitochondria and stop the cortisol stress loop.
And the biological mechanics behind that recommendation are rock solid. If your fat intake approaches 60% of your daily calories, which is, very common in many modern high-fat diets.
Like keto, right?
Like keto, exactly. You force your body to rely heavily on fat oxidation for fuel. That specific metabolic state can drive dysfunction and actually slow down your thyroid.
Interesting.
But providing your body with steady glucose from healthy, easily digestible carbohydrates, things like whole fruit, white rice, cooked root vegetables, gives your mitochondria the immediate, clean-burning fuel they need to produce ATP.
So when the cells finally have enough ATP energy from those healthy carbs, the body realizes the famine is over. The cortisol fire alarm finally shuts off.
The alarm shuts off, the inflammatory signaling drops, and the DHEA sprinkler system can finally recover. You are literally denying tumors and neurodegenerative plaques the chemical environment they need to grow.
This is so fascinating. So we've covered an immense amount of biological ground today. I mean, we have sleep architecture disrupted by audio junk food, stress hormones eating the brain circuitry, and molecular rust corroding our energy factories to drive cancer. Let's synthesize this into a blueprint. For the person listening right now, how do they actually reclaim their body's repair systems?
We have to address the inputs systematically. First, we fix the sleep architecture. If you absolutely must use a sound machine to sleep, the research says to keep it below 50 decibels.
So like a light, distant drizzle, not a thunderstorm.
Exactly. Move the speaker 3 to 6 feet away from your bed and use a 30 to 60-minute timer so it shuts off once you've drifted off. Or, even better, run a 1-week self-experiment.
Okay, what's the experiment?
Try sleeping with ordinary foam earplugs instead. Track your grogginess and see if your brain feels sharper when it actually gets to experience pure silence.
Yeah, test it out for yourself. See if you feel more restored when your brain isn't on that auditory treadmill all night.
Okay, what about fixing the metabolic stress and the molecular rust?
For that, you need to stop the cortisol alarm by providing adequate, clean fuel. Eat enough healthy carbohydrates so your body doesn't have to break down its own tissue for energy.
Got it.
Do a pantry audit and swap out those volatile seed oils, the canola and soybean oils, for stable, traditional fats like grass-fed butter, ghee, or beef tallow.
Get rid of the molecular rust.
Yes, get it out of the house. You also want to channel vitamin D levels with your doctor. The optimal range recommended here is between 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter for immune and hormonal health. And for some people, utilizing natural progesterone can actually act as a built-in biological brake system to counter excess cortisol. Okay, and finally, fixing the nervous system itself. The research suggests stepping away from punishing cortisol-spiking high-intensity workouts if you are already chronically stressed.
Right, don't add more stress.
Yeah, replace them with daily walking, slowly working your way up to an hour a day. And utilizing breath work, specifically 4-7-8 breathing. That's where you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. Why is that extended exhale so critical?
Because that long exhale physically changes the pressure in your chest cavity, which directly stimulates the vagus nerve.
Okay.
The vagus nerve is the information highway running from your gut to your brain. When you stimulate it through that 8-second exhale, it pumps the brakes on your heart rate and chemically signals biological safety to your major organs. It literally tells your primitive brain that you are no longer running from a tiger. The emergency is over.
So, connecting directly to you, the listener, if you had to pick just one domino to knock over today to start this repair cascade, what does all this research point to as the most effective first step?
Start with the absolute easiest removal of stress. Audit your bedroom tonight. Tonight. Dim the overhead lights after sunset to signal to your brain that the day is over. Ditch the all-night pink noise. Protect your sleep architecture tonight so your body actually has the mitochondrial energy and the ATP to fight off the bigger, unavoidable stressors tomorrow. It all starts with giving the brain the silence it requires to run its deep repair protocols.
Wow. We started by questioning the soothing rain sounds on your nightstand, ventured into the hormonal tug-of-war deciding the fate of your memory, and ended up looking at a global map of how molecular rust from our cooking oils drives cancer. It's a wild biological ride.
It really is. And it leaves us with a provocative thought to mull over. In the modern wellness world, we constantly look for things to add to our routines to be healthier.
Oh, constantly.
We buy expensive new supplements, we strap on new sleep trackers, we download new ambient soundtracks for our bedrooms. But what if the ultimate secret to longevity isn't about adding anything at all? What if true, robust health in the modern world is simply about becoming an expert at subtracting the invisible noise? Whether that means meticulously subtracting linoleic acid from your pantry or just subtracting the broadband static from your bedroom.
I love that framing, unplugging the background apps that are draining the battery so the smartphone can finally run its update. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. And to everyone listening, keep questioning the world around you, keep testing your own routines, and we'll catch you on the next one.